welcome to the most important panel of the day. For those of you diehards who are still here, we do appreciate your fortitude. Hopefully we won't bore you. But we're excited to talk about innovation in health and safety, something that I've spent a number of years at the NFL working on, and as it turns out, with some of the partners here. So we wanted to talk a little bit about the work that we're doing and hopefully where we're going. Let me start with a round of introductions. On my left here is Eric Armstead. If you couldn't tell, of the three panelists, he's an NFL player. 11 years in the league with the Jacksonville Jaguars, and most importantly for us, the 2024 Walter Payton Man of the Year. For those of you who don't know, appreciate it. That is the most esteemed award that the NFL gives out every year for somebody whose excellence off the field contributes to everything that the league and their club does. So it is a unique job and a unique honor for Eric. Also a respected leader who's deeply invested in mental readiness and growth, both on and off the field, and the co-founder of the Armstead Academic Project, which I'm sure we'll hear a little bit about.
Yes, sir.
Eric Taylor, sitting next to him, Eric and Eric, so easy for me to remember. He's a partner of ours with Nike and the Senior Director of Sports Marketing for leagues, colleges, and partnerships. And Julie Souza with AWS, and we'll hear about the league's relationship with Julie, who leads as the global head of sports, strategic innovation leader focusing on technology through leadership in sports, and has partnered with the NFL specifically, and this is a passion of mine, to create the digital athlete. So we're all old friends. But let me start by talking a little bit about the journey the league has been on over the last number of years around the health and safety of our sport. As we've gotten better at collecting data through new partnerships and the benefit of advanced technologies, we understand what happens on an NFL playing field better than we ever have before. And we work regularly and committedly to try to use those insights that can be found to improve the sport for those who play it. So we'll start with Eric. You've been in the league 11 years. Tell me a little bit about what it was like when you started from that perspective and how it may have changed over the last few years.
I like to consider myself like I was on the last tail end of the old kind of NFL. Like when I played, coming in my rookie year, not to get too technical about football, but there was fullbacks, there was tight ends, there was heavy personnel sets. It was run the football, smash mouth. I was in the wedge on kickoff return, so I used to run together with the guy, hold his hand, and we would have 11 people running full speed at us from 50 yards away, and we're trying to block them. And so I kind of consider myself still feeling some of that old school mentality of the NFL. But looking where we're at now, 10 years, 11 years later, things have changed a lot. Speaking about the kickoff, that was a rule that changed, and we changed that to make the game safer for one, but also to still have that exciting play be a part of it. But the data that you're talking about that goes into this in terms of player safety, injuries, and all these things that using data we can take into account to try to make our game safer and still super exciting is great. And from a player perspective, guys are a lot more conscious than they were when I first got into the NFL. Not only individually taking care of the body, but thinking about things more long-term effect. And so the more and more information we have that is provided to us to better take care of ourselves, guys have been taking heed to that, and we've been using that, and our mentality has changed a lot as well too. Guys are taking better care of themselves, both individually, investing our money back into our bodies, but also the teams have done a great job of providing a lot more resources for us to better take care of ourselves too. And it's been great to see that mentality shift. And it's always going to continue to evolve, but it's definitely things are getting a lot better.
Let me stay with you for one more question, since you mentioned some of the guys. We changed the kickoff rule. Some people like it, some people don't, or at least at first, people are getting used to it. Take us inside the locker room. What's the conversation like with your teammates? You're like, okay, we're doing what now? How is this going to work? Like, how did it go when the league passed that rule and announced it? What were the conversations like in the locker room?
Well,
be honest.
the start of every year, there's a meeting. So before training camp, they bring us in for a meeting, and they talk about the rule changes for the year. So they put up the kickoff, and I think guys were pretty excited about it, to be honest with you, because special teams guys I was fortunate enough to only have to play special teams 1 year, but special teams guys are crazy. Like they're like the gladiators of. We're supposed to be gladiators, but guys who play special teams are really crazy. And I think they're excited about it. And it took a little bit of time. You have the preseason games to kind of work through the kinks. But what everyone saw was the kickoff, returns went up. We still had that exciting play for the game, and that the injury rate for that particular play had went down. And so I think that's what you're always trying to evaluate and see. Another thing too is, has anybody seen us wearing those mushrooms on our head? That's the thing too, that mentality has changed. Like, I'm not gonna lie, when I first seen the mushroom, I'm like, I'm not wearing that, bro. Like, that looks crazy. And I still haven't convinced myself to wear it in the game, but we wear it in every practice. And that's just how mentality can shift over in a short period of time, where guys would be like, I'm never wearing that, to some guys wear them in games, and we all wear them in practice. Mm-hmm. And it's not even like a thing anymore. We just put it on. Like we were told this allows us to play longer and be more safe and avoid concussion. So yeah, let's do it. Let's figure that out. So those are some of the ways that things have changed.
Great. Eric, we're going to skip over you for a second and go to Julie, since Eric was touching on the kickoff and some of the things that have benefited from the collaboration between the NFL and AWS since, Julie, 2019, maybe, thereabouts? Yeah. Why don't you share with the group sort of the fruits of our partnership and the goals and how we've used that technology to change the game?
Yeah, I mean, I think, as you alluded to, it starts with data, right? So collecting data out of the game. In the case of Digital Athlete, there are about 500 million points of data being collected per week. It's an awful lot of data to process. And you're mining that data for insights, right? And that's something that AWS is pretty expert at, mining data for insights and processing that data and applying sophisticated algorithms to discover things like the kickoff rule. So 4x concussion rate, 2x injury rate over a normal pass and run play. As Eric said, the kickoff wasn't actually being returned. So taking 10,000 seasons worth of simulated games, we were able to run these algorithms to optimize for two things: fewer injuries, higher kickoff returns. And in doing that, that's where we ended up with the rule change, the dynamic kickoff rule as it is now, to make the game more dynamic. And what's remarkable about that is those simulations panned out almost exactly. The injury rates have come down and normalized with a normal pass and run play. There were 74.5% more kickoffs being returned, 1,157 more, actually, returned in the 2025 season. So,
do you get our data directly? Do you have it like pipelined into your office?
I'm not going to reveal my sources. And that's one thing, right? But also think about, hip drop tackle. Mm-hmm. Hip drop tackle was do you guys know what that? You want me to demo on you right now? Hip drop tackle caused a 20x injury rate, really hitting lower extremity too, right? So now we're coming off a season with 25% lower extremity rate injuries, and that is because with that data, the league banned the play. Right? So the game is evolving. Rules are changing. Equipment is changing. You're talking about the helmets. Guardian caps, yes, are helpful in practice and things like that, but the evolution in helmet design have made the helmets just as safe, if not safer, than a Guardian cap, because you figured out everybody used to wear the same kind of helmet. Does a quarterback absorb a hit the same way a lineman does? No. So having these helmets designed for position-specific players has done a lot to lower concussion rates. Coming off last season, lowest concussion rate on history in the NFL. So our work is never done. Mackenzie says that all the time, and I love that. The work is never done. We're going to continue to mine this data for insights and ways to improve the game and make it safer and more exciting. And we at AWS are just thrilled to be part of that.
Eric, so we've talked about funny-looking helmets. We've talked about data and analytics. We've talked about rules changes. We haven't talked about other equipment, what the guys are wearing on their feet. It's oftentimes my impression from talking to players, it's a fashion choice too. Players want to look good. Look good is probably to perform well. But that's not necessarily what somebody involved in working at Nike would necessarily promote, although looking good is good. Talk to me about the other elements of it. How do you use data? How do you take a look at the cleat, the shoe, to try to advance the safety of players?
Yeah, look, I think you've hit on it, right? It's a mix of performance, style, and safety. I think at Nike, we sort of started with a coach and an athlete trying to solve athlete problems, and that spirit of innovation has never left. And so I think what we do if we're sort of on our best day is give somebody something that they look good in, they feel good in, it performs well, and safety is just an added benefit. You'll hear our researchers say sometimes that safety without adoption is just academia. And so the way that we get to safety adoption in the league, and ultimately, we've done a ton of work with you guys on trying to reduce lower extremity injuries, and some of that's about the cleat, and some of it's about the playing surface, and sort of we're looking at all those things. But at the end of the day, what we do best, I think, is when we can put that safety into a cleat that somebody wants to wear because it has cultural relevance and they feel good in it. And so safety is just sort of the added benefit of it performs well and I look good in it. And then, my team sort of takes athlete insights. We always talk about listen to the voice of the athlete. So sports marketing takes those, and then we have a whole group of scientists in Nike Sport Research Lab. And what we've been able to do, in partnership with you guys, is get a lot of league-specific data and pair that with what we're hearing from guys, right? One thing you'll hear talked about is sometimes you hear folks say like, oh, it's slipping here. But when we look at the data, it's like, it's not. And so you have to sort of play with perception because the athlete has to feel, say, like, this is going to perform for me. And you have to put the data into to make sure that you actually provide them the safety, but something that performs in a way that they perceive as benefiting them. And so that's sort of the three things we're trying to do all the time to make sure that we can give people the safest cleats and they get adopted and worn.
It's a really interesting point to think about the adoption, because when you're sitting there looking at the data, or you think you know the right path forward, that doesn't necessarily mean that the people who you're trying to influence are going to agree with you, right? On the helmets, helmets have changed dramatically over the last few years, much to the better, not just because of the mushrooms, but the actual technology in the helmets has improved because we've been able to understand the impacts that are caused and do lab testing to replicate what happens on field and have the manufacturers build helmets that withstand those impacts better. It's pretty straightforward when I explain it, but takes a lot of data and time. But one of the parts, and maybe Eric, this is a question for you, one of the parts that was hard was trying to convince the players that A is better than B if you've been wearing B and being successful for a long time. I wore it in college. I wore it for the first couple of years. There was one notable player who used a lot of unfortunate words against me on a memo that I wrote on Instagram, which I didn't appreciate. But, it's not personal. We're at a different place now, I think, because we're able to show a lot to the players that you were safer in this helmet by X% than that helmet. But until we got to that place, it was hard to convince people to make different choices. Just like Eric is saying around cleats. You want to move them into these cleats, but they like this one. Eric, what's that thought process like for the athlete?
I'll tell you a personal. My helmet choice, I have been wearing the same helmet for 9 years, and it came down to the league. My equipment guys was like, you can't wear that anymore. I'm like, well, why can't I wear it? I've never had a diagnosed concussion. It's been going well for me. Why am I trying to switch things up now? And they're like, there's better things out here. So I literally spent all of OTAs, so OTAs are off-season training, wearing different helmets, trying to see what was comfortable for me. And so, I had to go through that process. And once I got over the hump of, okay, I practice in it now, I can see the way I have been seeing, I can move my neck, and, it's not that different. And I was able to go through that of trying, 3 or 4 different brands, of helmets that were much more safer for me. That was something that I had to go through. But I will say that football is a sport that is very equipment intensive, I guess. You look at other sports, basketball, they wear a jersey and some shoes. But we
Oftentimes Nikes.
Yeah, oftentimes Nikes. But we have a helmet, we have shoulder pads, we have pants, we have cleats, we have socks, we have all this stuff on our body. And everyone is a little bit individualized and different. And there's certain stuff that just doesn't feel right, and you have to like find kind of your groove in all of that. But it's great to have options going through that process.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Julie, as you look forward, you've given this a lot of thought as to the journey we've been on so far. If you were to say, okay, what's the next step with the digital athlete, with rules changes, with whatever, what applications of the technology that we've developed together do you think are untapped?
Applications beyond the NFL?
Sure.
Yeah, I mean, look, at its core, what we're doing is making sense out of large volumes of data, right? And so that's transferable in any industry. But when you look at the particular use case of the digital athlete, we're creating digital twins, essentially, of players and being able to simulate different activities in a virtual environment that doesn't subject a player to actually having to simulate that activity. That's applicable in the military. It's applicable in physical therapy. It's applicable to healthcare. It's applicable to a lot of different industries. And I think the whole simulation component of that is interesting. Even I was telling the story earlier about even in automotive, which let's take a car as an athlete. Simulating changes to car design in F1. We did that at AWS too to help them redesign the car to optimize for more overtakes in Formula One, right? So it's like there's this whole ability to harness data and use it in ways to sort of test hypotheses and then prove them out before you put them into production. That's widely applicable to any industry.
And Eric, what do you think? The work that we're doing, granted, there's a lot of work to come.
Yep.
Right. We just entered into a recent partnership with Nike around greater research. What sort of big picture? What do you hope is going to come from that over the next 5 years?
Look, I think we've spent a lot of time together, and I think, to your point, recently sort of deepened the partnership, and I think all with the shared goal, right, of reducing lower extremity injuries, educating players, frankly, and equipment managers on the safest options. I think if we get it right, you'll have broad adoption. I mean, 75% of NFL players wear Nike cleats, and so you're sort of in a unique position. It's a heavy responsibility, but a unique position to sort of affect broad change at the league. I think if we get it right, you have that mix of elite performance, elite safety, and then style, and we sort of. It's better for the fan because their favorite players are playing on the field. They're performing their best. It's better for the player because they feel better. Whether or not they choose the cleat because it looks cool or has safety, we'll just give them both, and then they don't have to make a trade-off. I think if we can get to the place where surface agnostic, we feel like we're putting out the safest cleat that we can, and ultimately through the data we'll see, reducing lower extremity injuries and keeping players on the field, I mean, that's the win.
So a follow-up question to that for both Erics. You can go first. From the league perspective, our focus, it's almost, and this might be a failing, it's almost myopically on the NFL athlete. I search through the data every week. How many high ankle sprains did we have? How many ACLs? What surface were they on? What cleats was the guy wearing at the time? What helmet was somebody wearing when he suffered a concussion? What we haven't done a particularly good job of, if I'm being totally honest, is I don't know if we've done a good job of forcing the changes that we've found down to other levels of our sport. I think the colleges, and I may be wrong about this, are as much of a Wild West on a lot of the safety initiatives as they were 5 years ago or 10 years ago when we started this work. So for both of the Erics who have unique perspectives on this, how do we do better at that? How do we push down or out the learnings? Helmets are better. Surfaces research. We're doing the surface research. Cleats are better. Tackling techniques can change. Rules can change. if you were to advise the league to how to take some of our learnings and get them throughout the football ecosystem, or even to other contact sports, like what would that look like?
I think it happens organically at times. I mean, like even, a player wearing, a guardian cap or whatever. Younger players look up to us. We have influence, but more storytelling around that, more marketing and storytelling around players making concerted efforts to make those changes as well too. And I think we already have the influence on the younger generations and younger players coming up, and they're going to follow our lead. If we think it's cool, or if we say it's cool to be safer, then they're going to be like, okay, it's cool to be safer. And I think that's some great ways that we can help change that. I mean, I had a conversation the other day with Carbon, who's a company here, and they do 3D printing, and they do the 3D printing for helmets. And he said they're coming out with a program that youth sports are going to be able to get 3D printed helmets. So that's like where I think things should head, and it sounds like they're heading in the right direction. So,
Eric, what do you think? How do you advance change faster?
Yeah, I mean, I would say first, I think you're maybe a little humble on the power of the shield to sort of advance that, and how much people sort of take the lead from, a guardian cap. Nobody would think about it in a game, and now people see him, and I think you'll start to see it. I think one is, again, I always go back to just listening to the athlete. We did some work with some young high school players, little bit of consumer research, a little bit of trying to understand the athlete. And one of the things we heard over and over is like, they want it to be cool and they want it to feel fast, right? Like speed and cool were the two things they were concerned about. They didn't necessarily know which one was faster. They just sort of had literally by like weight, they were sort of like, oh, this one feels fast. I think that's a really valuable insight when we talk about sort of marrying performance, style, and safety. You have to deliver safety to them in a way that they want to receive it. And so I think if you understand and you listen to the athlete who says, the younger athlete who says, I just want it to be cool, well, then it's our responsibility to embed safety into what's cool. Mm-hmm. And so, what we tend to do is we'll bring out a cleat that has all this cultural relevance and is on fire, and they don't have to know that we put the latest and greatest plate on there. And so I think the way that we can get there faster is by doing the work with you guys, coming up with the solution, and then just putting it across the entire line. So that's what's on the market. And the kid can buy it. They can choose the reason they bought it. Safety doesn't have to be the reason, but it's just a benefit they get gift of purchase.
And Julie, AWS does a great job of storytelling. Certainly the work that we do together. Do you have a sense, is there a way to measure whether or not that's moving the needle with other levels of our sport, or making people understand that data and analytics and understanding safety can be quote unquote cool or interesting?
Yeah, no, and I agree that you're underestimating the impact. I mean, the helmets that kids are wearing in college and even high school are not the same helmets they were wearing before. They are wearing the safer helmets, right? And so I think what the league has done, educating the current players in the league about what a safer helmet is. 98% of your players are wearing the top performing helmets now. And part of that was that the league did a really good job of explaining the benefits and letting people like Eric find the helmet that fit him, but that was still in that safe category. So yes, I think there is a trickle-down effect. But I think in general, this age of consumers, they are facile with data, right? Things like next-gen stats, for example, which are part of the vernacular, and people lean into that 10-year anniversary of next-gen stats. Let's go. I think that's just made this generation like receptive to data, right? In a different context, in a fan engagement way. So then when you come back and you say, I'm going to present data about player health and safety or about game strategy or anything else, that receptivity is already built in because the league is also invested in using data in ways to engage fans in other facets of the game.
That's a good answer.
Yeah, I think another thing
Thank
too
you.
is, that was great. I think another thing too is from a marketing perspective, taking more of a grassroots approach, not just for the game or for from a brand perspective, but from a player or a player and health safety perspective of, when all the shoe brands, that's why they sponsor AAU teams, because they want to build up when they want to get them when they're 8, 9, 10 years old, and they're going to wear that brand for the rest of the time. If you can and start incorporating those safer options for youth, that's just going to be the new norm. So you're kind of already making the decision for them at a younger age.
Before we wrap up, we made what I think is an important announcement earlier today around a challenge that we're running around helmets and the next stage of innovation there. We've seen helmets improve from a force mitigation perspective and therefore safety advances over the last few years, 20-25% better than they once were as a result of a lot of work that's gone into understanding the helmets, as I alluded to earlier, and a lot of ideas that have come from third parties, not necessarily only the helmet industry. What we haven't seen over that period of time are any changes of any note to the face mask, which, for football fans, you look out, and if you look back 5 or 7 years ago, it looks exactly the same as it was before, and it's made out of the same materials, and it's designed the same way. And now we see, given the changes in our concussion numbers and injuries to players, that as changes are made to the helmet, fewer and fewer concussions are caused by hits to the shell, and more concussions as a percentage are by hits to the face mask. So imagine you're a running back, you're carrying the ball, and you're hit, tackled shoulder first into the face mask, or even if it might be against the rules, helmet first into your face mask. Or you're an offensive lineman blocking a defensive lineman, and the defensive lineman lowers his head, and the first point of contact is your face mask. We're seeing about 44% of concussions in the NFL from those sorts of dynamics, and yet that part of the protective equipment hasn't changed in all these many years. So we started a challenge today, launched, I thought there's a slide maybe coming up, launched today. Hey, look at that. Use the QR code. Submissions open until, if I read this correctly, May 28th. We're going to do a webinar on this March 3rd, I think. So I got a thumbs up. I got that right. March 3rd, for anybody who's interested, share this information. We're trying to get this out through all the channels we typically do to try to engage, not necessarily the helmet industry alone, but engineers, engineering schools, people involved in material science and others. Might have different ideas around architecture, might have different ideas around materials. Participate in this. Submit your ideas, win a prize. And I hope, like we've done in the past, that this is going to advance the thinking. And sometimes the helmet manufacturers, when we've done this, have licensed some of these ideas and incorporated them into the helmets that they currently make. So it's a well-worn tactic to do a challenge, an innovation challenge. We haven't done one in a couple of years. But the helmet itself is crying out for it. And for all of us who are sitting here, Eric probably most notably, I think we want to get our heads wrapped around the fact that helmets might look a little different. And that's going to be okay if it's going to add a layer of protection. So we're announcing that today and are hopeful that this is going to help advance how things go. So let me wrap up, because Eric didn't know I was going to do that, letting him have the last note here to tell me whether or not that's a terrible idea.
I'm looking at this picture, I'm like, man, when are we going to start playing football with jetpacks? I'm like, how long is that going to take? Maybe maybe 60, 70
You're going to play for a few more years. We'll get there.
Yeah, they might have some bionic stuff for me by then. But this is awesome. I think we always have to be innovative in our approach to improving these things. And a challenge like this is amazing because you're bringing solicited new creative minds into the process, and not just like, okay, we can figure this out. We can figure out how to make. No, let's bring some different brains and minds into the equation and see what can be possible. So I think this is really, really cool.
I'm glad you came out with that side of the answer. I don't know what I was going to do, but the other way. Just a quick round of applause for Julie, Eric, and Eric. Thank you guys for doing this.